So, hello everyone. I hope you can all hear us now. If you could just let us know on the screen, that would be lovely. If you could just send us a little thumbs up, that would be great. Thank you.
We'll be able to see that.
Yeah, in the chat button.
Raised hands.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Nice start to our leadership event. I would like to just take a moment to introduce our panelists today. So we've got Kirsty Jarvis, who is the founder and managing director of Luminous PR. And we've got Alice Rose, who's the managing director of Fountain Partnership. Both of the women have been in their careers for a little while, and they've both taken very different journeys to where they've got to today. So what we're going to do is have a quick talk through their history and their experiences and how they found their role in leadership, especially in a technology field, and then we'll answer any questions towards the end of the meeting. So if you just put them in the chat column, and then we'll have a look at those at the end. So I guess with no further ado, over to you both. So your journey so far, how did you end up in the role that you both have now?
Yeah. It's kind of interesting because we had a chat, obviously in kind of the lead up to this, to try, and it's a massive subject. It's clearly a really, really big subject. And we realised that we've had really quite different paths, haven't we? So yeah, do you want to?
Shall I go?
You go first.
Okay. So I went off to university after finishing A-levels, and had no idea what I wanted to do, so I went off and did geography because they teach you at school that it has transferable skills. So off I went, no idea, knew I didn't want to be a geography teacher, but there we go. And studied for a few years at UCL, graduated, came back to Norwich like I feel everyone does when they are born and raised in Norwich, they don't even come back and go, oh, it's nice here. And heard about a company called Fountain, and knew I wanted to do something in tech. Didn't know that digital marketing was the one, but just knew I wanted to do something probably Google related. And so applied for a job here, no idea what paid media was, what SEO was, but knew that they sounded like a company I wanted to work for. So I applied for a job, which they very kindly gave me, and I started from scratch. So I've been at Fountain 11 years now. Started on the tools, like doing paid campaigns, having clients of my own, being an account manager, all that kind of thing. Got promoted to head of digital and then took on the managing director role in 2020. So yeah, I've sort of only worked here other than the occasional odd job at Waitrose and for my dad, and the sort of rites of passage jobs that you have to do growing up. But yeah, I've been here the whole time, which I think is quite a privileged position to be in, really. Yeah, how about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, so Luminous, I started my own business, so rather than kind of working up as you have, I decided, and I think the reason I did that, I studied architecture, so again, I mean, it's a great thing to study, but completely irrelevant to actually what I do now. But yeah, I think I was definitely a product of my upbringing, I think. I came from quite I'm trying to think about how to say it diplomatically, but it's very traditional family, which I think for me, it was a very clear message very early on that there was going to be some challenges and obstacles for me because I was a girl. That was kind of part of what was instilled in me from a very young age. So I always knew really early on that if I wanted to have it all, as women always kind of try and do, I wanted to try and do that through having my own business. But it took me a long time to get there. I mean, I didn't start Luminous until I was 34, and it's 10 this year, so I'm 44 now. And it's and then so Luminous was started, and I went into technology because, like you, I knew I wanted to work into tech, and I think that probably was the little link back to architecture, was it was very kind of technical in certain areas. But yeah, and technology just was always an area of the world that I was really fascinated about. I have to be honest, I never thought this is a man's world, and you know, I probably never really felt that in my career since starting Luminous, actually. But yeah, here I am now. For very many different reasons, I didn't have it all, because actually running a business by yourself, it never goes really, really smoothly. But yeah, I mean, here I am as a woman in technology now, and I'm very pleased that I'm here, really.
Yeah, I mean, when we got together and sat and chatted about this webinar earlier in the week, one of the things we talked quite a lot about was role models, wasn't it, through our upbringing. And one of the things that I feel is sometimes, like, this topic of women in leadership is quite a scary thing. I think you said in your LinkedIn post, actually, it's a conversation we avoid. One of the reasons I think I've avoided it historically is because I feel like I haven't had to come up against too many barriers being a woman in this role. And I think that's partly the confidence that's been instilled in me since a kid. My mum was a head teacher and always worked full-time, too much, took early retirement because she worked too hard. She made herself stressed, like a lot of teachers, I think. So I've sort of mirrored her. Well, I have to go out, I have to get a job. That's the done thing, and off I go, and she can do it, I can do it. And then felt very lucky to find Fountain, and that's a business that's founded by 2 men and 2 women, and having role models in Rebecca was previous managing director before I took over that role from her, but she's been so supportive of women in the workplace and the flexibility that we've got as a culture at Fountain to encourage more women in the workplace. So I think that's sort of lulled me into a false sense of security that sometimes there isn't a problem.
Yeah.
Which I think has been interesting. But I've sort of been able to follow in someone's footsteps, whereas you've sort of forged your own path at Luminous.
I have, and I think it's so there's 2 things about what you've said that's really interesting for me, because I'm a woman, of course, but I'm also a business owner, and I definitely feel with a really small business, you try and do as much as you can to make any kind of barrier for all of the challenges that women have in the workplace, and paths to leadership. Actually, you try to make those as flat as possible, but it's I found the biggest obstacle was myself, actually, in the kind of running of the business. And to sort of explain that a little bit more, I felt when I started my business at 34, clearly for most women there is a ticking clock at that point. And so probably for the first 5 years of Luminous's life, I was like, I've got to do this quickly, I want this to be in this place by this place, so that I can have the ability to take some time out and somebody can run my business while I look at having children. And unfortunately, what happened for me was that life kind of gave you a little side swipes at various points. So we did have quite a big event that happened quite early on in Luminous's life, which effectively meant I kind of had to almost rebuild. And I remember having a kind of conversation internally, and obviously, really thinking really seriously, like, okay, right, this has taken me back a step, as most business owners will find. What do I do now about having children? Because now I've got another probably 2 years to rebuild. And then obviously I unfortunately got to kind of the end of my 30s and found out that it was probably too late for me to have children. So that was but all that whole period of time up until I knew that was like, wow, I really put so much pressure on myself. So even if you're in the workplace or you're trying to be, to build something on your own, there's just all of these kind of external factors that women have that are really, really tough. They're really tough to try and navigate in the right kind of balanced way.
And I think as a business owner, also, I guess you're thinking about, one of the things that we're thinking about as well is, how do we support women to have it all, but also how do we help them to navigate that, because that's a very difficult frame of mind to be in as women, of I've got to be able to have the career, I've got to be able to have kids, I've got to be married, I've got to do life in this order. And I think it's definitely something I've thought. Life goes in this order. It's you finish school, you go to university, you get a job, you find somebody, you settle down, you get married, you have a kid, you progress your career, you retire happy and healthy and great, and this is the way that it should go. But there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach, and we need to be able to encourage women in the workplace to forge their own path, whether that is following that linear sort of progression that society tells us we can have, or whether it's not, you know,
Yeah.
and
And I think that's why I find this subject really hard, because I really can't give any answers to how people do that. It is such a complex problem. And every woman is really different with how they want to, you know, how they want their life to be. And for some women, you know, that's okay. But I think for me, I always felt that there was this massive fight between fiercely ambitious, really fiercely ambitious, and that definitely again was a product of being told you can't have that because you're a girl, and I'm like, I'm gonna have it, so, you know, I'm just gonna do it.
never tell women you can't have something.
I know. It's but it is really hard, because you don't know how. I can't really. I think one of the things I do know, and I've sort of a little side project that I've spoken to you both about, I'm working on at the moment, is in the kind of field of perimenopause, because I am now in my perimenopause phase, and I think women they go through these phases in their lives, and each one of those phases are really, really different, and they all, like, it almost feels like you have to kind of start and reimagine who you are at each one of those phases. So you start work and you know you've been faffing around at uni or you know whatever at the beginning, and then you start work and you have to be serious and you're learning and you're a sponge, and then you might go into motherhood, and then that's a whole new juggling act, and then you suddenly think you've got that down, and then perimenopause comes along, and it's just impossible. But I think one thing I feel really strongly about is that the only way we're going to get to the other side of it is if we bring more men into the conversation, because certainly in the experiences of the project that I'm working on with perimenopause at the moment, whenever we go and talk about it, it's a massive outpouring that women want to talk about it. And it's the first time in a long time that, you know, I think women are feeling like they've got this kind of voice on a subject that's been very buried. But equally, guys in the audience are fascinated. And we've even had people come up at the end of that to say, like, you know, I'm understanding more about my partner now, or I'm starting to feel a bit bad about some of the things that I've done in the past, or yeah, and I think we are a force when women are together, an absolute powerhouse. But we have to kind of invite guys into that conversation, otherwise they don't have that frame of reference. They're, you know, the empathy.
And I think other women as well. Like it's not something I know anything about. And I'm a woman, but you don't get taught what perimenopause is at school. No. You know that menopause will happen at some stage later in your life as a woman, but what that involves and it entails is completely, you know, lost for me. So it's important for us as men or women, but as leaders, to go and educate ourselves, isn't it? Of these are the different stages of life that men and women have, and how can we as employers support them through that?
Yeah, because it's a big business problem.
You've got
I mean, it amazed me when we found this out, but perimenopause, if for anyone that doesn't know, is you know, can be 7 to 10 years of a woman's life. So, and that can for some women be really, really debilitating. So, you know, we laugh about brain fog and leaving the keys in the fridge and those kind of things, but actually, you know, confidence really badly gets affected at that point, and but also some kind of like health symptoms come up that make it really hard for women. And I think the stat that we found really, really amazing is that from a business owner's perspective, to know that women in their perimenopause age typically, you know, would have, I think they said on average 35 weeks out of a 7 to 10 year period of their career where they're unable to work because of symptoms of perimenopause. So whether that's really heavy periods, whether that's, you know, just actually just not feeling that they can do life, that's 2/3 of a year of a woman's life where they're not able to function. And that's crap for business too. It's really, really bad for business, because you've also got women that are super bright, top of their careers at that point, that are like, what's happening to me? I don't understand.
Well, that's really interesting. My journey at the minute is slightly different in that I'm pregnant, and yeah, this angle's probably quite flattering. If I turn to the side, but yeah, it's 33, nearly 34 weeks pregnant with my first baby, and that's a whole head messing like experience. I've got the some of the brain fog symptoms and the baby brain, like, and awoke at 4 a.m. this morning with pregnancy related insomnia. So sorry if I can't string a sentence together. But it's that whole, I definitely, going into this, it was definitely like, right, when should we plan to have a family? When can we start? When can we afford to start? When will I be at a good place career-wise to feel ready to start? And I think, by the way, that does never exist.
No.
So I think I was tricking myself into thinking that. And see, I'm losing my
But you're talking about
train of
planning to be
thought.
away from the business, like you've mentioned to me about you don't take a year, 9 months away from a business. How do you plan for that?
Yeah, and I mean,
How's that
when,
been?
well, scary. It got me thinking. Last year I had about a month off, which felt very indulgent to have a whole month off work. But that was the longest I've taken off education or work since probably primary school, which is just mad. And now I'm planning to take 11 months off work. And it's impossible to write a handover document for 11 months because you just don't know what's going to come up. And so that's really difficult to, get your head around. And what's the workplace I'm going to come back into when I return? Like, we're growing, which is great, but how many of the people sat in the building will I not know? And things like that. So that's been a challenge. And then thinking about the whole imposter syndrome. So I'm sure we all get that from time to time, but thinking, okay, well, what will, my role's changing from managing director to full-time mum for 11 months. I want to feel wanted when I come back to work, I want to feel like everyone's like, yes, she's back. We've got really well without her, but we're so glad to see her back. Okay, good. But it's that kind of feeling of, my job doesn't finish when I have the baby, and thinking about how I can mentally prepare for that. And I guess how as employers, how we set women up to be able to go on maternity leave and succeed. So we've actually only had, I think, one employee previously go on maternity leave. And at the time, I definitely didn't pay enough attention to thinking about how she must be feeling going off into this world. And things, and like how she came back, a year off is a long time. And actually, especially in the industries we work in, a lot changes week on week. Like there was a new social media platform announced yesterday, so how do we retrain people as they come back to help them feel confident coming back into the workplace, whilst they've also got to manage the new balance of being a parent and being and having a job.
That's a really good point, actually. So, because I know Fountain are brilliant with culture, but it would be really interesting if anyone watching has had any experiences that they could share on, either good or bad experiences of helping people. Because I've heard that a lot from friends that have gone back to work, just saying like, I don't know how to fit in anymore, and like I feel. I'm still skilled and I still have my skill sets, but I feel like a different person. And that again, like the kind of, I know kind of standard is you have kind of check-in days with people that are off to kind of keep them up to date, but it doesn't feel that that's enough for women that are wanting to come back and hit the ground running as much as they can, but also feel still they're part of it.
Yeah, and then you've got the whole debate around flexible working as well, right? So I think often speaking from, so a lot of my friends have recently gone through the phase of having their first child, and in our close-knit friendship group, there's 6 of us. I'm the last one of the 6 to have a baby, but there's 5 incredibly talented women there, doctors, journalists, doing a variety of work in tech, all these roles, and all of them have gone back part-time. And whether that's because they really wanted to spend more time at home with their children or the baby, or whether that's because they felt they had to financially or for whatever reason. And how do we as employers, like we need to think about how we set them up for success in coming back and being part-time, and how it doesn't, if you come back and work 3 days a week or 4 days a week and you're not working 5, how can we ensure that people can still progress in their careers? And we don't put these limitations on people because they don't seem as career focus because they're not here 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and working all the hours God gives. You know, it's I think that's a challenging thing. I think it's also a challenging thing for a mum if you're wanting to go back full time, and then the picture that sets like externally, you know, okay, well, we've got to put the child in nursery, and then people think, oh God, well that she's gone back to work full time, put her child in nursery.
Yes, I mean that, I
You can't win. That's very true.
win. I think that's right, and then I think I feel to talking about judgment and I probably think it does come just from within me. I don't think anyone's been overtly rude about it, but I definitely feel that there is a judgment that, you know, she picked her career over having children. And I don't, this actually the first time I have kind of probably shared my story again, because I can't really talk about the subject without sharing my story. And the assumptions are quite cruel, I think, and I think, but it's individual. Again, every woman has the right to make the choice of what they want to do, and if they want to come back, they can. I mean, I've got a client of mine who, this amazes me when she says it, but I think she only had 2 weeks of maternity because she was in an investment round, and she also didn't tell her investors that she was pregnant, and went and had the baby and then came back and then landed the investment. Now that was a very extreme case, but she obviously felt she had to do that to succeed, and obviously that's a terrible thing. The society kind of makes you feel that, and you're judged if you want to have a family, and that you're not going to be as committed to your career. And similarly, if you want to come back, why not? I mean, it's the one brilliant thing about technology is that it has enabled us to have that flexibility. So I think it's just about changing stigmas, isn't it?
Yeah, and one of the things that I guess society's changed. I feel like there's a movement that's changing on that front, you know, that women can have a career and have a family, and things are going, but we are still very much behind. It's interesting. I'd be interested to know in a few years if they do a study on the impact of COVID and women feeling like they can have it all, because obviously during pre-COVID, the workplace was you came into the office 9 to 5. You didn't work from home unless you were very, I guess there are some industries that allowed that, but now there's so much flexibility with working from home. I think people maybe feel like there's less barriers to coming back to work after having a child, because they can go and do the school run, get back home really quickly, park their car, log on, and they're online then until they go pick the kids up, and then they take them to after school club and stuff. And I think I'm hoping that the flexibility that came from being able to work from home, work remotely in COVID, means that there are more women feeling like they can get back into the workplace.
You were talking before about networking, and you've both said that luckily because of role models and the way that you were you had the role models and came into the workplace, that you haven't felt those women in tech challenges. But I think you've mentioned to us before that there's kind of a networking thing, and there's been occasions in your career where you've thought, this isn't right.
I guess we've observed it, haven't we? You know, there's situations, it's the tech issue.
Well, that's the tech team.
I think, speaking from my personal experience, although I haven't necessarily felt like I've come up against the whole gender challenge in the workplace, I have observed it. You know, there's especially at things like networking events and industry events as well, where you turn up and, you know, there's 100 people and only 20 of them are women. I feel very fortunate. I mean, we were talking about how confidence changes over your life cycle, right? And right now, or over the past sort of 11 years I've been at Fountain, my approach to those kind of events has been coming from a place of confidence, where I don't mind walking in and being a woman in that room. So that's why I sort of alluded to the privilege thing before, but it is going to be a massive barrier to a lot of women who haven't got the same mentality, or you know, it's very new to, or they haven't had the female role models. You know, walking into a room that is male dominated, you have to do that a lot, and that is a scary experience. And yeah, I don't know that there's a solution to that. I think we need to encourage more women into those environments and make it a happy and place, an inviting place, an encouraging place for them. And I think there's some people have done some brilliant work in that space at the minute, but there's a lot further to go.
Yeah, I think I shared with you when we spoke earlier that I actually quite like being one of the only women in the room. I think it's I think women, if they do feel nervous, my advice is to actually just look at it as a major opportunity, because everybody's in the same boat, man or woman, you know, everyone's there to kind of network and meet, but diversity, and normally in a room full of guys, if you are in the minority as a woman, they tend to have this kind of wanting to nurture you and bring you in. So you can go, if you know there's somebody really senior in the room or someone really influential, typically you can go have a conversation with that person if you're yeah, one of the minority in the room. And also, you know, everyone, while at the moment sadly there isn't that kind of proper equality in terms of representation within female male split, there are a lot of opportunities where they're trying to be more diverse, so you perhaps get opportunities that you might not because you're a woman. So I just think, look at all the ways that you can just turn it to your advantage rather than using it as a barrier to do those things. That's my kind of, I've always experienced that. But I mean, just to give you in the 10 years that Luminous has been in existence, we've had such a small handful of female clients in comparison to male. I mean, I am most of my clients are men. Most of the environments I go into are guys. You know, it is a really sad demographic, and I would love to see more women coming through and doing some brilliant things in technology. And I think it's changing. Yeah, I've been in this, doing this for a long time. Even before starting Luminous was in that kind of technology world, and it was a lot worse. I'm seeing more women coming through, but I think going back to the point about role models, one thing I feel quite passionate about is ensuring that future generations of leaders have those role models and that are really inspired, because it does concern me a little bit about some of the aspirations that people in general have. I think about careers, but women, you know, thinking about their futures and what they might want to do, to really kind of have people to look up to that are smart and, you know, carving out a path. And maybe I think any woman in leadership, if they feel passionate about it, should try and be the role model that they needed when they were younger. And it's not, yeah, because I didn't have that. Definitely didn't have those people to look up to. And I think if I had, I probably would have been inspired to start my business earlier, and therefore I probably wouldn't have had the kind of challenges with regards to that balance of life that I had later on in life.
I think that's a really good point, the sort of mentorship. Like, how can we promote women mentors? And we've got a couple of members of the team who've just started doing being mentors, and I think that's and it's something that Rebecca's done a lot of, and I think we have to promote that kind of level of activity in order to help create these role models. I think the other thing that's a massive challenge, and we obviously can't tackle it, and I have no idea what we do about it, but a lot of these stereotypes and things, they start at school, they start in the education system.
Oh, I know.
And it's such a massive challenge to try and change the way the curriculum views, you know, society and women and women's role in the workplace and things like that. But, you know, even things like, well, I was really excited to see on two fronts really the recent changes to early years support for nursery and things like that, and actually properly being funded, because if you look at Scandinavian countries, I think it's that in some countries you get free childcare from when the child is 6 months, and the rate of women going back into work then is huge, because they financially are supported, and they can choose not to, but they have that support network to be able to go back into work when they feel ready. So the announcement about that recently was good. But if we think about things like the average school day, you know, it starts at 8:30, it finishes at 3:30 or something like that. The average job is 9 to 5. So who's picking up the child at 3:30? And it probably, in most cases, it will be a woman. But that sort of approach to the school day is, I think I read somewhere that it was created back in the Victorian ages, and it was so that the kids could get back in daylight and get on with the chores. We're not in that society anymore, but the system still works that way. And like, let's not go down the whole talking about like teachers have too much to do, and I'm not saying they should work an extra hour and a half every day, definitely not. But those kind of old traditional societal norms that we have are perpetuating some of the problems with getting women back into the workplace if they want to and if they feel comfortable. And businesses can go so far in supporting women back into the workplace if they want to, but actually the problem is so deep rooted. There's so much work to be done there. One of the stats that I was reading about when we were talking about this was there's a great campaign being done by a lady called Anna, I'm going to look at my notes, Anna Whitehouse, who on Instagram is Mother Pucker, called the Flex Appeal, and she's been campaigning more flexible approach to employment rights and things. And they did a recent survey that found that if we increase flexible working in the across the UK economy, we could unlock £55 billion. Because there's that much resource sat at home who feel like they can't get back into work for whatever reason, and we'd unlock 51,200 jobs. So it's like, if we can make movement in this ground to support women more, the payoff on the UK economy is going to be great. So
I'm just gonna, because I'm mindful of the time. So
sorry, I went on my little soapbox.
No, you didn't. So we'll have a look if we've got any questions. I'm going to have to pull the laptop towards me. Bear with me, folks. But I guess one of the things that would be really nice to know is your 18-year-old self, right? You're talking to your 18-year-old self. What would you tell her that is going to set her on her path now that you wish someone had told you before? I know that Kirsty, when we were talking about a woman knowing her body and knowing her when she's on fire and when you just leave her alone.
I was thinking it's true. So I've learned this a lot because I've had to, because I go, you know, again, I'm younger, you go 100 miles an hour, and now I'm old. I'm not gonna say old, but older. I've had, you know, the symptoms that I've had with perimenopause have been quite tough, and I have had to realise that I needed to do something different. You know, it is not possible to be consistently performing all the time. I would say for any person, man or woman, that's right to say. But for a woman in particular, we are cyclical creatures. We have this cycle that happens every month. And I certainly didn't know until I started looking into it that the way that your hormones work with your body, you will be better at certain times of your cycle with regards to certain types of thinking, like creative thinking, or being able to work really fast and suddenly like tick things off and multitask. Like, I mean, I'm sure we all feel that. And sometimes you feel like you're wading through mud. Like, that's not a coincidence. That is your body mechanics, your biochemistry that is doing that. And I think that the thing that I would say to women, just because we have it hard on so many different levels, make it easier for yourself by just trying to understand more about your body. And again, technology is brilliant now, because when I was younger, you didn't, and it was like, all I got told was, well, if you're not having children in your 30s, you had it, you know.
And put a little P in your diary.
That's very much it. Whereas, you know, here we are. And again, that's not right for everybody, because some people don't want to track that. They don't want, but if you are really thinking about trying to have that balance of career and trying to make decisions, because you talk about when is the right time, when you do it, just use technology and try and know as much about yourself and listen to your body and try and work with your body a bit more, because you will have a much kinder, I definitely have a much kinder time where I go, right, I'm going to do some accounts work today because there's no way I can come up with a strategy. My brain just doesn't even know my own name.
Let's put creativity the next week. How about you? What would you say to your 18-year-old self?
Oh, boy. Oh God, what did I say? I think that this is the brain fog. I have to
take the questions and you
check the questions.
Okay. Let me zoom in to the laptop. Alrighty. The good thing is very slick with this. So Hey,
No questions?
no questions.
Oh, no, now
If anyone wants to put their hand up.
Q&A.
There we go. Ah, great. So we've got somebody who said that better paternity alongside this will enable women to have more options. So obviously we've touched on women's maternity, but yeah.
I think that's really interesting. I think one of the things, so we, speaking very personally, I just started antenatal classes, and there's 7 couples all due around the same time, and the norm in that group is 2 weeks off for men, and it's mad. I completely agree with your point. And there's somebody in the group who works for Aviva, and they have got the best deal out of everyone. You know, I think it's 6 months full pay paternity leave. And I mean, you know, if you have a cesarean, you can't drive for 6 weeks. So, you know, that's one of the things that's, I think, very scary to women. It's 2 weeks off and then they're expected to go it alone with this new baby that they have no idea how to do. They can't go out. They're sort of trapped in their own house. So I completely agree. We need to put better systems in place to allow men to pick up more of that parental sort of allowance. And one of the things that is great that you can do now is the shared parental leave, but again, it's not done by many. It's still not really there where it needs to be. I think there's definitely a challenge for small businesses as well to be able to afford better policies for both maternity and paternity. We brought in an enhanced maternity policy last year, but it's, you know, as a small business, it's going to cost us quite a lot. So I think that is a challenge, but we need to just overcome and just understand that that's something we need to put in place, because an engaged, happy workforce is a more productive workforce and a more profitable workforce. So I think we need to start just building it into our budgets that we are going to pay more than the government, than the statutory, because it's not enough, especially in the cost of living crisis at the minute.
It was interesting, Kirsty, because you said about your client who went back to work after 2 weeks, and as a woman, everyone's like, oh, she's gone back after 2 weeks. But men are expected to go back after 2 weeks, right? So we judge that woman who has gone back to secure her funding. If it was her partner, everyone would be like, oh, I bet you've come back for a break. It's really nice to have you back. It's a very different experience, isn't it? And it doesn't make it equal.
No, it's not equal. And I think we as women probably also, because I was saying about Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In book, which she very much, I mean, some of that I don't necessarily agree with, because obviously she is a CEO of a very large corporation, and you know, it's very easy to kind of, you know, be able to say this is how it should be. But she talks very clearly about the 50-50 in the home, and it has to be a real kind of partnership to support women to really be able to go back to work. But that's all very well if businesses are also on board with that, because you're right, guys do have responsibilities and they have to come back, and I would imagine feel quite helpless when they are leaving new mums at home with new babies and not feeling like they can be part of it. And I also have heard from guys as well that they feel like they can't be part of it, because you know there's so much time between mother and baby that they can't bond in the same way, so then they can't be as helpful because baby is not as you know, not as comfortable settled, you know. So I think there is so many things, and as a small business owner, it is so hard, because you're right, I just don't know how we would fix it. I mean, as Luminous, like, there's so many things that I hear coming out in the workplace now that, you know, I know some companies are giving women salary sacrifice on being able to freeze eggs, and you know, amazing stuff. But you know, as a small business owner, I would love to do that, but I just don't know how we would do that as a business. And so there needs to be some other support somewhere, I think, to try and help. I'm not going to let you off the hook, Al.
No, I'll actually come up with another thing. So rather than what would I tell myself as my 18-year-old self, I'd rather answer, what can we do?
Just ask the question.
Sorry, no. What can we do, I guess, to support each other in this? And one of the things that I would say is support other women. So how can we help each other through some of these challenges? So whether that's offering to be a mentor, or like understanding that as people are going through certain times in their life, like perimenopause, like maternity leave, that they are probably facing all of these mental challenges, all of these anxieties around brain fog, around imposter syndrome and all of that stuff, and how can we as women support each other through that? You know, there's social media promotes quite a lot of competition and oh, look what they've got and that kind of thing, and I think that's such a negative thing to come out in the last sort of, well, since Facebook happened in 2007 or whatever, and we need to put that to the side. You know, there's enough jobs in this environment for all of us, there's enough money to go around, there's enough that we can all do really well, so how can we come together to help each other through some of these challenges, learn from each other and sort of pave the way and set the standard for the next sort of generation.
Yeah, that sounds like a lovely way to conclude. So unless anybody has got any questions, I just want to thank everybody for coming along today. Thank you for bearing with us with all the tech woes. You'll be pleased to know that I'm not on the tool, so you can generally, this is why there's been the tech issues. I want to say thank you very much to Kirsty Jarvis and Alice Rose for their time today. We'll be cutting down the webinar and sharing it, and so you can share it far and wide, but I just want to say thank you very much for coming along, and thank you both for your time and for being so lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you.